Now, welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time the question is, how do you feel about Dave Filoni and his contributions to Star Wars over the years? And after we look at the results, we will once again be discussing some of the comments that were left on the poll. And once again, this time I will bring in my wife, Sailor Naboo, from our channel together. Always makes these discussion videos easier to talk to somebody instead of to a microphone. And now let's get to those results.
The results of the poll asking, how do you feel about Dave Filoni and his contributions to Star Wars over the years? 33% said love Filoni and or his work and what he's done for Star Wars. 44% I'm a fan of Filoni and or his work and his contributions. 16% he and his work are fine or no strong opinions either way. 5% not a fan of his work and what he's done might even have hurt Star Wars. 2% can't stand him and his work has been very detrimental to Star Wars.
And this is where I will once again point out that yes, these results may be somewhat skewed or biased based on the fact that I'm a pretty big fan of Dave Filoni myself, so it stands to reason my audience will be as well. Either way, extremely impressive. A lot of love for good old Dave Filoni in this.
Yeah, but I think he deserves it. He's kind of been our Renaissance man here in Star Wars after all of the harm of the sequels. He's trying to bring the fan base back together.
He does feel like he's been carrying the weight of Star Wars on his back a little bit, along with Favreau and some others, of course, as well. After these sequels maybe broke the fan base a little bit. All right, and before we get to the comments, let me just once again say thank you to everybody who votes, comments, or watches these or any of our videos. Also, a big thank you once again to everyone who supports the channels over on Patreon. You guys are the best. And now let's once again begin with the top-rated comment left on the poll.
Top comment is from Isaiah Rodriguez. He's made great work. My one major gripe with him is his over-reliance on cameos. His Book of Boba Fett episode had Luke, Ahsoka, Cobb Vanth, Mando, Grogu, and Cad Bane. But no speaking lines for Boba. He nails the core themes of Star Wars, but also has a tendency to turn the galaxy into a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I agree. He does love his own characters, especially Ahsoka.
It's like Cheers. Everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
He sticks to a small core group. Cameo Fest can be overwhelming.
It's not that it's bad, but sometimes, as the comment kind of points out, it's a cul-de-sac. It feels like the same kind of people know each other when this is a galaxy of, countless different beings. Mm-hmm. And yet the same, five always seem to be in the same place at the same time. The Force works in mysterious ways, I guess.
I think that's why I'm excited for projects like The Acolyte, where we're getting a brand new cast of characters that we've really never heard of before.
Yeah, I am kind of excited to see what they do with The Acolyte. I mean, there are some questions around it, for sure. But it is something completely brand new and not just... The Mandalorian is new, but it's still a familiar time period. This is going to be, even for the EU, this is a time period that is virtually untouched. And I know it comes from the current High Republic era. This is the ending of the High Republic era. And, it does kind of come about right before where Plagueis and such should be about. So it's an interesting time period that not that we should be talking about the Acolyte, but I'm curious what they do with this show.
Right, because it's not going to be full of cameos.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. Or at least not ones we would all recognize.
No, and if it is cameos, it could be some really cool ones.
The next comment is from McGee. In my opinion, Filoni and Lucas together were the dream team. Lucas restricted all of Filoni's worst impulses, and it really shows when you watch some of his more contemporary works. That is not to say I dislike Filoni, not even in the slightest. But now that we've had several years to experience his work without George's direct oversight, I feel it's safe to say that Filoni really benefited from George's curation. We all have our own criticisms of Filoni, whether it be fan service, cameos, filler, etc., and I feel that across the board these flaws have become more prevalent in his work since the departure of George Lucas. Ultimately, I'm going into Ahsoka with no expectations, good or bad. I might even wait for the first couple of episodes to come out to give the show a chance to pick up speed. I voted choice 4. I'm fully willing to move up to a 5 if Filoni knocks my socks off with the Ahsoka series in subsequent movie.
I mean, the thing about the Ahsoka series is this is really, in live action anyway, this is his first kind of full on his own project here.
Mm-hmm. Favreau had a huge part to play in Mandalorian.
Yeah, Favreau is, I think Favreau kind of trumps Filoni, though it sounds like Favreau defers to him a lot on the lore stuff and making sure this fits for Star Wars, but I do feel like Favreau has he's the executive producer, he's the showrunner, so he kind of has the final say, where this feels like this is full on Dave Filoni. He's writing, he's going to direct, I think, one episode, but he's the executive producer. This is his big shot to to, as the comment here says, kind of knock our socks off.
Which he needs to do so that we've got even more faith in the Filoni Mandoverse movie.
I absolutely agree. I don't think this can fail. And what I mean by that is, if this is a dud, then you're going to have Lucasfilm kind of like, hold on, wait a second. Did we announce Filoni was going to be getting his own movie? Maybe not.
Maybe we said Favreau was doing it.
But no, I agree. I think the dream team is Filoni and Lucas. I think Lucas has never been the greatest on his own, if you will. Not that he's bad. He's a genius in many ways. But you look at the prequels and what happens when Lucas was kind of free to do everything and anything he wanted.
Yeah, that yes men syndrome.
Yeah, he's writing, he's directing, he's making all the shots or calling all the shots. So it's going to be curious to see, again, what Filoni kind of does when he is the man and there's really, not as much oversight on him here.
Mm-hmm. Next comment is from Kahammer100. The thing to remember about Filoni is that for every Siege of Mandalore, there was a Jar Jar Binks episode. He brings balance to the Force by being both amazing and terrible.
I don't know that there was much terrible in the Clone Wars. There was some not as good. And I think the early seasons where the show was kind of trying to figure out what it wanted to be, because I think there was the initial idea to go in there and make it kind of a more of a kid's show. And then you kind of realized, well, yes, kids are watching this, and, well, those kids are starting to grow up, and we know we have a lot of adult fans. So they leaned more into something serious, which kind of weeded out a lot of the more lesser or childish episodes, I think.
I agree with that. I mean, it even shows in the evolution of Ahsoka over time.
Yeah, exactly. Ahsoka definitely grew up in the show, and she became less, snippy, and she became more of a solid character. That's why she's getting her own series now, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of initial complaints about Ahsoka in the series that a lot of people didn't originally like her.
Oh, I didn't like her either.
That she was just some bratty, annoying character, and they're like, really? Why is she here?
Yeah, I couldn't stand Ahsoka at first. She just totally the annoying kid down to a T, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't know that there's many terrible episodes of the Clone Wars, if really any that I would call terrible. And there's certainly a lot of amazing episodes.
Absolutely.
Siege of Mandalore is fantastic. As I've said before, some of the best Star Wars you're going to see anywhere.
Or the story arc where the clones fight the clones.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That's
the Umbara arc.
Yes, the Umbara arc. That's what it's called.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, the Fives arc is also fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
We could go on and on.
All right, the next comment is from Red Rock 22 Productions. After finding out his Clone Wars replaced the stories that got me into Star Wars, I ended up with a sour opinion of him. Everyone says he's made good Star Wars, but I'm not sure why when we have better stories that came before. This comment goes along with MaxiEXE. I grew up with Clone Wars and Rebels, so Dave Filoni most definitely had a big part in introducing me to Star Wars and shaping my childhood. For that I am and always will be thankful. The one major gripe I have with him is his disrespect for stories told by people not named George Lucas or Dave Filoni. We've seen multiple instances where Dave wanted to tell a story that contradicted another story that had already been told, and he just went ahead and told his story anyway with no regard for the previous story or its storyteller. Stuff like that shouldn't happen. In fact, Disney promised that it wouldn't happen, which is why the story group exists. The problem is, they just seem to give Dave a free pass.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue some have with Filoni is what he kind of did in the Clone Wars. Now, mind you, it's not entirely Dave Filoni, right? He is still working with George Lucas. We don't know the exact extent Lucas is working on the Clone Wars, kind of in the day-to-day thing, right? But pretty much anything the Clone Wars did while he still owned Lucasfilm had to be approved by George. So any of the changes he made came from George or were allowed by George. But what most people don't like is there are some comics. There is the original Tartakovsky Clone Wars series. Mm-hmm. There's Karen Traviss novels. And yeah, the Clone Wars series does not align with those. And I understand, I really enjoyed the Karen Traviss novels. I know you read those as well.
Yes, I did.
Really good stuff, and they're completely scrapped.
My problem is that, as this comment points out, Disney promised this wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I was going to move into that too, yeah.
Right. But then he directly had issue and kind of just overrode what was written in the
Ahsoka novel,
the E.K. Johnson book.
Yeah, we're talking new canon now. He's
overrode new canon as well, which is something we were promised would not happen.
Well, yeah. Well, the frustrating part is, yes, Clone Wars overwrote even before Disney purchased it. It was overwriting things from other Clone Wars authors. And so when Disney takes over, pretty much the first thing they do is say, the EU, there's a lot of good stuff there, and we might borrow from it from time to time, but We're going to non-canon it.
But even Lucas didn't fully canon it.
No, George Lucas himself has said it's a separate thing. So there was a part of me that's like, okay, I get it. I get where you're coming from. I get why you're doing this. And now you're promising to keep kind of everything straight. If I read a comic book, it's going to be the same universe as a movie. And it's all going to... And look, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? There's going to be mistakes, but we're talking about kind of blatant overriding things. That's where I get annoyed, and where other fans who keep up with everything get annoyed.
And I feel like it's extremely disrespectful to the authors. I mean, I know if I wrote a book for Star Wars, and I'd be super proud and super happy with my work, especially if audiences received it well, and I believe the Ahsoka book was received well.
It's a pretty good book, yeah.
And then to have another creator, Dave Filoni, go ahead and pretty much rewrite my story would kind of suck. He didn't, I mean, First he did it with his last season of the Clone Wars, where he kind of went in and was like, well, the Siege of Mandalore, your interlude chapters, they didn't go like that.
No, they're completely...
And then he came back and went, here's Tales of the Jedi, where I'm going to fill in some more blanks in Ahsoka's life with these tiny shorts that just demolished some writers' year-long
the
writing
Dooku
process.
one does too. I mean,
yes,
because there's the Dooku book as well that dealt with all this. And
the Dooku book's not as...
Neither one are, like, demolished. You can kind of bend and twist and try to work it together, but it's not really working well.
The Inquisitor that she fought in Tales of the Jedi was not even the same Inquisitor.
No.
So there was definitely problems.
No, I agree. I'm just saying...
That book was pretty destroyed.
I'm not trying to defend Dave here at all, because it is annoying, but you can kind of twist. But the Kanan comic, too, is just completely blown out of the water. There's no way to rectify that one.
No, and that's what's upsetting, is because other people have worked so hard in these different mediums to give you these Star Wars stories that they're probably proud of and happy with at the end of the day, and somebody else comes through and says, yeah, I know yours was canon and stuff, but nobody has to even read it anymore.
He does seem like...
Why would you tell anyone nowadays to read the Ahsoka novel?
There's no... Unless you just want it for the pure... It's a good read, don't get me wrong, but yeah, if you're like, I want to know about the canon...
Be written as an EU book.
But I mean, he does kind of have that George Lucas attitude where, hey, there's my Star Wars and then there's what other people do.
But that's not what Disney promised. Disney said this is all Star Wars.
Yeah, which is what I was really hoping for. That's the one reason I'm like, okay, you're going to get rid of the EU, but you're promising me that henceforth we're going to have a consistent canon, or a largely consistent canon. Again, there are going to be little things that don't line up perfectly. That's fine. But the big things need to.
Moving on to the next comment from Len Barnett. Dave found his audience in the Clone Wars. Most of it was good, with some filler, but ended strong. Hopefully the Bad Batch will also.
Yeah, the Bad Batch, I've talked about it before. That's not really Dave Filoni's anymore.
No. Filoni looks at it from afar, but he's not really in that anymore.
Yeah, he's definitely not in the day-to-day discussion. I'm not saying he has no part to play. I know if I were him, and I mean, considering what we were just talking about, how he does kind of really care about his Star Wars, I have no doubt he's definitely in the conversation. He's definitely probably reading scripts or reading synopsises at the very least and keeping tabs on what it is, but he's not in the writing and creative process as far as we know. Not even remotely close anymore.
Next comment is from Joseph Hutton. He provided a breath of fresh air with the Clone Wars. He seems real down to earth and humble, but I think he shines brightest as a consultant or a creative leader. I'm not sold on him as a live action director. That could change, but I think his strengths are continuity, world building, and character work.
Which is what Lucas's strengths were too. I mean, I'm not dissing on the prequels. I love the prequels, but the prequels are not as good as they could have been had somebody else perhaps written them or directed them or had some creative influence in them. And I mean, as we were saying before, I think the Ahsoka series is the ultimate decider. This is Filoni getting to do exactly what Filoni wants to do with Lucasfilm and Disney oversight, of course, but that's the great test. This is the Padawan taking his Jedi trials. Is he going to become the master, or is he going to flunk out?
I still think that's why they brought Favreau in, to kind of teach him how you do live action, because Favreau has a much more grounded live action background, be it from Marvel and projects he's worked on before then. Yeah,
and that's something to be noted. There's a vast difference. You would think it's virtually the same, but there's vast differences. And I think Favreau and Filoni recently in an interview from Celebration were talking about kind of the differences from animation to live action. They are not one and the same. They're not. It's not like I'm just going to write an animated show now. No, the mindset and the approach is much different.
And that's why I believe Favreau was brought in. He is there to teach Filoni how you do live action.
Yeah.
Just
so we will see if The Apprentice can.
Just like
again.
there was an interview where Filoni talked about how he was mentoring the next generation, the next level of people who are doing Star Wars animation projects.
Yeah.
He was working with the Bad Batch crew, mentoring them to kind of pass the torch on animation. Now he's moved into live action. He's learning from somebody else. It's a process, obviously.
Yeah, learn from those who came before you.
Final comment from Live Long with Force. I think Dave Filoni is feeling the effects of being the next chosen one. Besides the usual pressure from the studio, he genuinely cares about what the fans think. These two often don't align, and the result was obvious during his interview at Celebration. Hugs for Dave.
Yeah, he got emotional at a point. I mean, he cared. Like, I understand there's people who are critical of him, don't like him. That's fine. I think that's fair. Anybody who puts themselves out there as someone who's going to be making content for Star Wars better expect some criticism. But yeah, I genuinely feel like he's a pretty humble, down-to-earth, good person who actually cares about the work he's putting out there, which is why I root for him.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to root for people that I feel like actually give a crap about me. Go figure.
I do want to see him succeed and grow. I hope he can get over some of his little vices. Currently, I think right now he might be filling his inexperience with cameos. To go, well, how do I keep this exciting? How do I spice this up? And he doesn't have an answer. He goes, well, if I bring in this character, we can spice it up. I think that's one of the challenges he's working to overcome. And I wish him all the best.
No, I hope he grows. I hope he... You know, there's this weird part of me that wants Ahsoka to die just to see what Filoni can do without her.
She's a crutch.
She is kind of a crutch.
His whole characters, they're a crutch to him right now.
Yeah, I would love to take Filoni and tell him, okay, we want you to do a new project set 300 years in the future. Go.
He's like, Grogu's still alive, right? I got somebody. How long do the crew to live?
Yes, how long do you think her to live?
As long as he needs him to.
Yeah. Well, she's going to go hang out in the world between worlds for 300 years. But
She'll be back.
No, seriously, like, I love Filoni. I don't mind so much the cameo fest that it can sometimes turn into. He even talks about how, they like to they have the whiteboard where they have the pieces and they try to fit these things together. So that's cool. But I would be interested to see what he would do starting fresh or starting at a new point. Starting with brand new characters. And to an extent, The Mandalorian is, but what happened to The Mandalorian? It started to bring in all these other characters.
Well, and that is partially Filoni's baby as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think The Mandalorian is Favreau and Filoni's kind
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I know I think they all know what you meant too. So I think it's kind of a hybrid of the two. All right, well, that is going to be all we got for you this time. So now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell us what you think about Dave Filoni. Is he the chosen one? Is he a false prophet? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.